which is almost the pride of the tri-services. And before we move on with the proceedings of the session, may I once again request for all mobile phones and all the electronic devices to kindly be kept on to silent mode so that we have an uninterrupted flow of the proceedings of the sessions which are coming up. And ladies and gentlemen, as you all are aware, B2B meetings have been organized, which are organized as you move out. On the right-hand side, you can register for the B2B meetings. Each slot is of 30 minutes and on the basis of first come, first serve. And ladies and gentlemen, also I would take this opportunity to invite all of you to join us for In SpaceX War Game 4.0, which is being scheduled on 26th of February. That is the concluding day of DevSat. And now we move on with the proceedings of the next session and warmly welcome all of you to the next session on EU-India Defence and Space Industrial Cooperation from Strategic Alignment to Industrial Collaboration, which moves the conversation from policy statements to practical pathways. And while India and European Union are united by shared democratic values and a common vision for a secure, rules-based space order, this session will examine how the strategic alignment can be transformed into concrete industrial collaboration through co-developed spaces capabilities, dual-use innovation, trusted supply chains, regulatory harmonization, and sustained industry-led engagement across technology manufacturing and market access. This important dialogue is being jointly organized by Grey Space Consulting Brussels, a firm actively facilitating transcontinental cooperation in defense and space ecosystem. We sincerely thank Grey Space Consulting for partnering in shaping this critical EU-India dialogue. And now it is my privilege to invite on stage our distinguished chair for the session, Dr. N. Sudheer Kumar, former Director, Capacity Building Program Office, ISRO Headquarters. With decades of experience in India's national space program and capacity building initiatives, Dr. Sudheer Kumar has contributed significantly to international collaboration, institutional partnerships, and strengthening India's global space engagement. Sir, we are honored to have you chair this important conversation. And may I invite esteemed moderator for this session, Mr. Divyanshu Ganatra, partner at Grey Space Consulting. With extensive experience in European defense and space policy landscapes, Mr. Ganatra has worked at the intersection of strategic advisory, industrial partnerships, and regulatory engagement, making him ideally placed to navigate this EU-India cooperation dialogue. Inviting distinguished panelists, Mr. Abhishek Agrawal, Director of Business Development, ICEYE. He represents one of Europe's leading SAR satellite companies and brings perspective on space-enabled military capabilities, commercial ISR, and operational collaboration across continents. Inviting Mr. Pacome Revillon, CEO of Novaspace, who is a respected global voice in space market, intelligence, and industry trends, and offers strategic insights into emerging opportunities and competitive positioning within the global space economy. Inviting Dr. Chiranjeevi Phanindra, founder and CEO of Cosmoserve, who is an entrepreneur in India's expanding private space ecosystem, brings insight into indigenous innovation, satellite operations, and scalable industrial collaboration models. We invite Mr. Keyur Gandhi, regulatory head at Dhruva Space. With expertise in regulatory frameworks and compliance architecture, Mr. Gandhi provides perspective on policy alignment, licensing pathways, and cross-border operational readiness. And finally, we would like to invite Mr. Abhimanyu Singh, co-founder and CMO of NashShield. Representing the cyber security dimension of defense and dual-use technologies, Mr. Singh brings focus to trusted digital infrastructure, secure supply chains, and resilient collaborative platforms. And ladies and gentlemen, I now invite Mr. Divyanshu Ganatra, our distinguished moderator for this session, to kindly take over and lead this session. A gentle reminder, sir, this session has to close by 3:10. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for... Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. We meet for this session at a very opportune time. Here we are... You can't. We meet for this session at a very opportune time. We've just announced the India-EU FTA, and also India and EU have signed the larger Security and Defense Cooperative Pact. We've seen over the last few years that Europe has increased its spending in defense and has focused a lot on strategic autonomy. India, as its recent budget will demonstrate, has also continued to keep its focus on Make in India and also on the defense and space sectors. Whilst keeping these aspects in mind, we need to speak with the industry today to better understand what practical pathways can be developed to have more collaboration between these two regions. And to set the tone for this conversation, I would like to first invite Dr. Sudheer Kumar to give his thoughts on this topic.
Thank you, Divyanshu. See, for any business, one is need, another one is opportunity, and converting that opportunity to business scale. If you just see the relation between European Union and India, it goes back to 1960s. Surprisingly, I should recall some of the names like the space father of Indian space, Vikram Sarabhai, went around the world, picked up the collaboration with France, USA, to bring the first Indian space program. Centaur rocket, which is basically the first generation rockets like Nika Apache, who brought the solid propellant technology. Then the Vikas engine, let's say from the Viking, which brought the let's say, workhorses for ISRO. The programs like Ariane continued, let us say business engagements between EU and India. That is the biggest milestone. The programs like Megatropics, Saral, which combined programs, is again created a good ecosystem. Right from Centaur rocket even till the Gaganyaan, the cooperation between the two countries and the multiple national space agencies is extremely good. The next to NASA, I think the biggest contributor for Indian space program in terms of collaboration is EU. And of course, Canis is we consider it as Dr. Blement. In fact, 2019, when Vikram Sarabhai centenary program we were celebrating, I personally in touch with Blement. Unfortunately, he was not well. He could not make it out. He was considered as the first scientist who traveled, who handheld our, let us say, Indian scientists with amazing kind of technology. So keeping that friendly kind of environment between EU or India, now jumping into the business perspectives. If we take the good companies like Safran, Thales, Airbus, then Leonard, good companies are there who have established their establishment in India, who are more into aerospace and defense. But space, they have to yet to catch up. This is what we have been discussing, how actually you can contribute directly to the Indian space ecosystem. The last 3 years post-reforms, Indian government also expressed where actually the industry can penetrate into in scaling up the missions. Now Indian startups and multinational companies and corporates, they have now geared up. The analysis statements, the problem statements have been furnished now. Fortunately, I can't disclose, but a good amount of opportunity for the strategic sector has been very cautiously and very carefully given to the industry. Now industry is picking up because it takes some time. Here the question is, let us say Indian ecosystem, how actually we can accept the EU partners, in what way? Quality-wise, cost-wise, timeline-wise, in terms of policies, like several these things we have to see. But the best ecosystem would be, let's say, to be more competitive with the technology. We expect that the technology in spin should happen. And these companies, they should understand the requirements and start manufacturing inside India to be more competitive. They can serve the global markets because thereby they can increase the profit margins. And Indian industry also should not think that everything I'll do in-house. because somewhere it is a collaborative approach. So somewhere I'll do and somewhere the ecosystem should build. Otherwise, if everybody start thinking everything I will do in-house, then nobody wins the game. So this collaborative approach has to be discussed. This is an open dialogue is required between the industry, the technology partners, the capability partners. Probably that day the policymakers, the platforms like SIA should enable such kind of discussions through open the opinions, where actually these gaps should be filled to meet the requirements, to meet the cost requirements, to meet the mission requirements, and to meet the time requirements. I think the already the discussions have been started. Good days to go ahead. We are confident that the ecosystem will leverage this particular collaboration, especially the friendly nation collaboration to the friendly national space agency collaboration to the industry collaborations. I am sure that this day is not very far, so that we can pitch in and we can leverage this best collaborative approach. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As we hear you, I think what you've said is that everything is there for the two regions to increase or enhance the partnership, but there has to be more structured movement from both the sides. Whilst that is being said, I want to quickly come to the first question. And the first question is a little ambitious. I want everyone, all the panelists, to sort of think ahead. Imagine if we were sitting on the same day, 10 years down the road, in 2036. How would you imagine this cooperation to look like from an industry side? And I want each one of you to very briefly answer this. I want to start with Keyur. Maybe you can begin.
Okay. That's a very aspirational and kind of right question, because that's what we've been thinking about too in the past few years while we try to advance a lot of critical conversation across borders, especially with Europe. I think what I would envisage a decade down would look like is actually a fused industrial complex, and I'll tell you why. In both regions, India and Europe, the spirit of make back home, which is make in India or make in Europe, is very strong. There are aspirations to do some firsts of constellations for various users. There is a lot of new emphasis found on supporting civil or commercially owned constellations for strategic uses as well, which means there is some clarity on the kind of service consumption needed. And now there is a lot more drive towards diversifying the way we think about space systems and assets, right? It's not one model philosophy wins at all. There are many new approaches which are emerging on building that infrastructure in space to get these services. With these challenges, when you put the barriers that are non-negotiables, which is of indigenizing, which is of owning technology, and which is of accessing space fast and with as less hindrances as possible and doing it in more secure ways, I think a fused industrial complex is the only way to go about it. I would also see there being a lot of reciprocal recognition on the kind of technical and security standards which are set forth, not just to assess services, but to assess even the fitness of space asset. Taking a cue here from the draft EU Space Act, which is there, I think we will see many more regions moving towards that, and for efficient cooperation, there being similar or reciprocally recognized standards or thresholds being existent will become one of the key enablers in this.
Pacome, do you want to go next?
Well, everything has been said, so we'll just try to add to it. I mean, to be fair, it's also a moment where space is recognized even more as a strategic asset. We see countries, obviously largely driven by defense and security, but not only, increasing their spending into space. That's very much the case on the European side, at the EU or European Space Agency, but very much at national level. I mean, Poland has been one of the countries increasing the most its budget in recent years. India as well, there is that momentum. So first, there is a momentum with investment in space. A second item is certainly the future is partly, largely about constellations, largely about the digital space as well, for what it can mean with different flavors. So it's brand new architectures that may develop in the next 10 years. And with two aspects there. One is, it will be very difficult for any given country to master all those capabilities. And the second is a time pressure, where you want to have capabilities in a very paced manner year after year. And so the question, and the second item, which is very, very true, is about competitiveness, whether it's cost-effective assets or whether it's just because you compete with the rest of the world. Just because of that, and with like-minded nations, and with the one having good alignment, but also strategic interest, and a broader ecosystem. There are a number of companies that were not there just a few years ago. So there will be some consolidation, but there will be certainly a broader ecosystem. So somehow it will make mandatory a number of cooperations that can be at a service level, acquiring reciprocally data, having some interoperability in systems, or having access to space to just launch those constellations up there. Or it can be as well at the system and component level. So there will have to be a mix of things, from the space infrastructure, to user terminals and the service layers in the background that come with it. So somehow there has to be an alignment, because if it does not happen, the capabilities that each country may ambition by 2035 are unlikely to be there if each country is just playing on just his own strengths without sufficient cooperation.
Thanks. Abhishek, do you want to take this?
So yeah, I mean, that's a good point, right? So there's so much we need to do in space. At this particular point, commercial space companies are operating large constellations, whether that's constellations for space-based internet or whether it's for Earth observation. But 10 years from now, the technology is going to evolve quite a lot. We're already speaking about having data centers in space. We're talking about even going beyond the low Earth orbit, beyond the Earth orbits, going towards the moon and how we want to privatize over there. So the space tech in the commercial sector is evolving pretty fast. And to be able to do that in a way that you're able to achieve all those visions in a time frame of 10 years, which, to be honest, is not that huge for space missions. Usually it takes one mission to be designed to that level, right? So how you do that is that to make that faster and to make that efficient, one way to do that is actually to collaborate. You cannot not do that. But having said that, I think to the original question, like where would you be in 10 years from now, how the collaboration would look like? I think my imagination would be that we have a common technological roadmap, and it's not individual. So anything that is being done by, what is envisioned by the European primes and the Indian primes, it's developed together. There's a common technical roadmap over there. And it makes sense because we have shared interests between Europe and India. We have shared concerns as well when it comes to security concerns. So it only makes sense to actually come together and have that common map.
Thanks. Chiranjeevi, do you want to?
Yeah. And first of all, thank you, SIA, for making me part of this esteemed panel. We are talking about FTA, right? So, in my opinion, trade is not about selling a product, but trade is about building the trust. And I feel that building the trust is there between European region and the India from a long time. I want to echo with what Sudheer Kumar sir said. We learned the technologies of solid propellant from Europe, and we learned the technologies of liquid propellant from Vikas engine or Viking engine of Canes. And we started serving the European nation, like launching their satellites, and we also collaborated on Gaganyaan mission. I was lucky enough to go to Europe, participate as part of Gaganyaan program, understand what they are doing for the human spaceflight program, and we are learning and we are co-developing. And it is very much evident that Europe is looking at India as a manufacturing partner to reduce their dependencies on the other countries in the current geopolitical conditions. I feel that is a good sign. And in 10 years, I feel that there will be joint ventures coming up, and then co-development of technologies will be happening, like someone said, make in India and make in Europe. So there should be a co-development of technology combinedly developing and then serving the entire humanity is what is going to happen. That I could envisage in 10 years.
Thanks. Abhimanyu, do you?
Am I audible? Yeah. So I think a lot has already been said. I would just state sort of like a civilian view here, living in middle of Europe, also see how they see India emerge. The battle lines are kind of drawn already. The wars will not be fought between West and East bloc, digital and analog. It will be the side that has the wherewithal in space and the side who does not. So if you look at Europe and India, I believe there is some natural synergies here, purely from sort of like a artsy standpoint. India is very much like Europe. We are very, each state is akin to a country in Europe, where the language, food, everything changes, but we stand commonly as a nation. And when I first moved to Europe, it was amazing to see that you could just drive from Italy to France, without a visa, which was like India. So I think those commonalities will bring an undeniable trust when we build common space technologies. And that will be the sort of like the rock on which what the next 10 years would give us. To sum it up, I would say Europe offers, in my opinion, a very safe supply chain, one of the most safest secure space supply chain, and high quality sensor systems. What India brings is huge scale in manufacturing and deployment. So if you look at all the 10 years of all the manufacturing involved, and if you bring these two forces together, you bring the cost of manufacturing down. And it's a match made in heaven. It's all now comes down to execution and policy making.
Okay, thank you. So we hear that, once again, the same thing, that there can be collaboration, the manufacturers can come together, and this is like a natural fit between India and Europe to work together in space and defense. But whilst all of these, we've spoken about all the nice things, I want to come down to the facts that over the last few years, we've seen several Indian companies set up in Europe. We've seen more and more European companies come to India in defense, but also in space. What exactly are the challenges that we are facing in scaling, mostly in Europe? And I want to start first with Abhimanyu again. I want to ask you that what are some of the challenges that you are facing in scaling? If everything is so natural, if everything is perfect, where are Indian companies facing a challenge?
Well, different companies, different industries face different challenges. Space is a different vertical, and it's so nascent that it's very opaque from outside. So for an Indian company to really sort of build something and export outside and make a mark in the European market, we need to have some kind of grounding at home. So Sir mentioned that we can't build everything in-house, but we have to start in-house, use this whole deployment base to mature, and then scale and have that validation and then go outside. But to go outside, I think what we need is clarity on compliance, which is a big gray area. Some startups might get stuck midway, realizing that, this does not meet the certification requirements. This does not meet the data compatibility requirements, all kinds of other bottlenecks they might run into. Tariffs is taken care of. It's great, but it's more like a tailwind. The big bottlenecks are these big unknowns that we need clarity on, because I think when you talk about industrial defense complex, the US is a very matured sort of evolved state of this whole, setup. Whereas in India, this whole thing is kind of disconnected. The warfighter, the army requirements are not known by the industry. So that translation has to happen in a way that makes it easy, fast, and deployable. So the one who gets it the fastest will win. And having that clarity is, I think, the first stepping stone.
Okay. Thanks. Keyur, do you agree with him, or do you have something else to say?
I do agree with him, and I do have something else to say. So let me don the hat of a commercial guy rather than being the lawyer here. See, in the last decade or so is when this concept of new space, or rather the LEO approach of faster access to space, cheaper access to data, and having more commercial participation as a result has indeed come out. Let's look at the commercial challenges on ground before one makes that big decision to invest into R&D or enter a new country and establish new infrastructure, right? We are transitioning as a space economy we are transitioning from being a typical defense demand-driven sector, where it is all about tenders and government opportunities, to now taking that leapfrog opportunity to build your own assets first, build capabilities first, and wait for opportunities later. That with new companies and established companies, and again companies which are established but new to the domain, have very different economic consequences, right? When it comes to opacity on how use would happen, I think we are coming very close to that step 2, where we are seeing there being support from the government on both sides, right? On building and using space assets as a service. But it is still in that nascent phase where, well, if I can say the forbidden phrase, the trust in the industry's capability to deliver at scale is still yet to be built upon fully. So while that stage happens, yes, of course, it's very tricky to sort of take a commercial decision. We'll get to the regulation next on how complex the standards or how difficult it is, meaning just to hire an employee in some of the European countries has given me more nightmares than making spectrum filings. So we'll get to those parts later, but yeah.
Okay. And Abhishek, on the other side, with ICEYE trying to enter into India, increasing its presence here, what challenges are you facing, or ICEYE is facing?
Right. One of the biggest, and it's well, actually, this is a problem both everywhere, and I think it's just how processes work when it comes to space in particular, right? So technical innovation moves faster than the procurement cycles. So by the time you're able to actually provide a capability, there is a risk that capability might already be obsolete in terms of operational requirements. So the biggest challenge that we have recognized is that we are able to innovate much more faster than the procurement cycles, right? And let's look at the services, for example. So there's a lot of things which are unclear or not predictable when it comes to the procurement pathways, for example, right? So let's take an example. One of the questions that we get is, okay, can you provide guaranteed tasking windows and timely delivery, right? And we say, yes, we can, you can reserve collection capacity with our constellation, and you're able to do that for your region, for the globe, whatever you want. But the problem is, the framework does not exist that would support this particular model. And that's where we sort of run into issues on how we can actually structure it to existing processes, and it's not always easy to do that. And it's a general problem, like when it comes to like subscription services, and I'm particularly focusing on those right now because I'm pretty sure somebody is going to cover the hardware part as well. So when it comes to the procurement milestones or the budgets or the timeline or like subscription service, these things are, they were not heard of before. So there's no framework around this thing that can actually support these things. So this is where it sort of gets tricky on how do we actually give this service when the pathway does not even exist in the first place.
Okay, thanks. And since you spoke about procurement, I want to pick that up. We've seen, as I said earlier, in India, more and more shift towards Make in India. We've seen that there is a push to have more strategic autonomy, and Europe feels the same. Europe feels that most of the technology, most of the space is critical infrastructure, and they want to have control over all of the strategic aspects of space. Now, with that being said, with both countries, of course, naturally aligned to each other, but also having their own strategic interests in mind, Pacome, do you feel that there are still natural synergies for countries to, for these regions to sort of collaborate in defense and maybe in space as well?
Yes, certainly. But I mean, if I want to take a step back and just with a sense of humor, if you ask a European company if it's easy to build business around Europe, we may have the same debate, like, okay, you're out of that country, how do you do to work with the neighboring countries and so forth? It's a challenge by itself. And I think it's something that has to be really fully captured, that outside of one or two entities, such as EU or ISA, you're in front of those various countries, some of them with a very established, developed space industry. Some others historically more users or trying to build an industry now that they did not have before. So maturity of those can greatly vary. And so the way you would approach each market has not been the same. I mean, even ICEYE has taken maybe about 10 years, but even in some countries was direct sale, another has been more of a joint venture, another has been about data sales, and indeed some countries have an armament agency, but they buy infrastructures and not good at buying service. So you have all of those issues you need to understand a bit country by country, and that's part of the challenge, I think, even coming as an Indian company, certainly. So that being said, yes, and with defense on top of that, each country wants to have as much as it can internally. That being said, can it have everything from really integration, equipment, data acquisition? Even one country will not have constellation with sensors of all kinds. That won't happen. Maybe they will have SAR, but they won't have full infrared, or they won't have hyperspectral, or they won't have full SSA capability, and they will need to acquire data. Either government-to-government partnerships that can happen, but also as much augmentation from private players. So I think there will be gaps or niches. Some of them may close over time, or you will need to localize some of the production and find partnerships. But some others will pop up also because to the next generation of assets. And just for that, you will need also to find some industrial partners. So, I mean, just because of the situation in Ukraine, suddenly there was a scarcity in terms of electric propulsion for satellites. The day after, now you need ISLs. Okay, who can really manufacture ISLs right now if it's what you need? And so forth. So you need also to anticipate what will be needed by the market in a few years and try to establish the partnerships. So yes, there will be niches or gaps, but you will need really to see the industrial partnership. I mean, you may also have a local incumbent working with a company or a system supplier just to work together and bring that capability to the nation as well. So it's really finding your path in that complex system.
Thanks, Pacome. And I want to bring Dr. Kumar in to answer this, what Pacome said, and to build on this. Do you feel that Indian companies are thinking about the future, envisaging about the future, picking up on those areas where there could be collaboration over the next decade with companies outside of India as well? Do you feel we are doing that now?
Let's see, especially if you're talking about 10 years down the line. One is conventional satellite or launch vehicle manufacturing and, let's say, extending the services. The other thing what Chiranjeevi has spoken about is the Gaganyaan program, is the Bharatiya Antarikshya Station program, where the government as a user expects that this particular, programs have to be completed within the time frame. Whether Indian ecosystem has got bandwidth to complete all these things within this time frame, with ab initio developing the technologies. Vis-a-vis, there is a technology available. Those opinions can come and collaborate with the Indian industry. That's what, if I recall, I was there in Bangalore where Chairman ISRO was talking about in the Indo-US global the trade meet. He was telling, I was expecting Axiom, or I was expecting somebody to come out and say that I'll build the first, the module of Bharatiya Antarikshya Station. Today, the issue is when government is bogged down to their own, R&D programs, in-house development, the technologies which are available in Europe, especially CANUS, they have trained us, they have been training us in the data systems especially, and they have a good program. Okay, why can't that kind of things industry, still European industries, I personally feel that they are expecting in a supplier order basis. The government is expecting you can come, invest and take the part of our development program and invest and infrastructure building you do, and you please pick up. This is what the gap between the major users, and in a way, if you can collaborate with the Indian industry is perfectly aligned with. I have several examples for that one which we have mooted. Ultimately, it has not come out. I think this model has to be changed. The conventional thinking has to go away. This next 10 years up to 2035 and beyond 2047, I don't think any country has given a roadmap the way Indian government has given in the space. And such a beautiful government commitment when it is there, it is up to the global industry to come forward and take part of it.
Oh, fantastic. And I think now again, I want to ask the industry now this question. That Sir has said that everything again on a policy side is fantastic. But starting with you, Abhimanyu, on both sides, if you could tell us, what is like the one thing you would want to tell the policymakers, or what is the one thing that you would want to see a change in? On either side.
Oh, the Indian side?
Could be Indian, could be European, could be both.
I would love to have a clear procurement policy of this is a need, can you build this? And if you build this is the first milestone, this is the money in the bank, this is the second milestone, this is the second tranche coming. Sorry. So basically what I was saying was the procurement clarity is the bare minimum a startup needs to really sort of strive, because startup just needs to go out there and build. They don't want to look at whether, who's paying the bills next quarter. So I think having that clarity on, if I deliver this, is there a financier funding this to take me to the next level, and then to the next level, and then outside India, is all we need, to give you a short answer.
Chiranjeevi, you are working in an area which is, I would say, more niche, something which everyone has their eyes on in Europe and in India. What is it that you would like to see from a policy perspective?
Yeah, like many investors pass on their opportunities to a deep tech founder. You passed on multiple questions without coming to me, so I want to utilize this opportunity to answer all those questions. Yeah, so just kidding. Now, one thing is Europe, they have very recently drafted this zero debris charter, and then ISRO, we also have announced the debris-free missions. The underlying statement is common. You can't leave your dead satellites in space, and you can't actually leave energy resources also in space, like you need to discharge your batteries, you can't let the secondary debris to form. So everyone are actually developing their systems to address these problems. But if they are unable to do by themselves, then that is when the service provider should come in and then clear the space debris or the dead satellites from space. I think individually doing this is at very high risky, because the space is very harsh. You can't do the things all alone. The risks and stakes are more. So what we did is we collaborated with this company called Dawn Aerospace. We are buying the propulsion system from them. It's a Netherlands-based company, and also we collaborated with them to conduct a joint refueling mission in future. So having said all these things, collaborations are very important, and I want to answer your this particular question, like what kind of policies changes I want to see. We have this COMAT list, and then Europe is having this dual-use cases, dual-use regulations. So considering all these things, still the end-user certification requirements, and then you have the clearances for the technology transfers, all are still high, because we don't have, Europe and India doesn't have any agreement together. So we need to have some kind of bilateral agreement, because we are now announcing free trade, and then we are also announcing that we are a collaborative regions. So we need to have a bilateral agreement where we'll be able to sort out all these issues. That is what I would like to see in very near future.
Okay. Keyur, do you want to chime in and give some opinions or some thoughts on the policy front?
Yeah, trying to make it as concise as possible, but to keep it very short, I think the aspiration everywhere has changed from accessing space to building capability to access space, right? That means everyone wants infrastructure, technology, ownership, and whatnot, especially when we look at it from the government's point of view. What has changed, however, in terms of economics, is that it's no longer just taxpayers' money, it's also deep tech investors' money, which is on the line. So it's very important, while shaping programs and policies to promote the space sector, to have a clear answer to this question. If we are building capabilities and building technology, why we are building it and how we are going to use it, because that's the answer that every industry stakeholder has to answer downstream when they put their money on the line for building infrastructure or undertaking R&D projects just for delivering on a few satellite missions. Unless we do that wisely, we might lose the momentum we've gained in the last 5 years out to a lot of projects and infrastructure which might potentially be of no use in the future.
Abhishek, do you want to quickly jump in?
Yeah, I want to build on actually what Chiranjeevi just said. So, we've had a lot of dialogues. We've had the FTA dialogue, and that came out positive. Recently, we had the EU-India space dialogue as well, which was separate, and again, very positive outcomes came out of that one. And then on the fringes of the FTA, we also had the EU-India security and defense partnership, which was also signed on the same date as the FTA dialogue as well. So we've had a lot of dialogues. And they all have the same theme of reducing friction and basically making the collaboration a bit more conducive, more productive. But I think what we need right now is like a more practical implementation playbook, something that we can actually use, built on top of all these three dialogues that actually help industries in both EU and India to actually collaborate with each other, right? And we need some sort of, if possible, to have a common framework. And a good example for that would be like, again, I'll just use ICEYE example. That's what comes to mind. That if, for example, ICEYE has provided systems to the Finnish Defence Forces, so this means that we've already gone through an extensive, a very strict audit and a clearance process and a compliance assurance process. So if we're able to build a common framework where we have the compliance frameworks built, something that is common between the two primes, it would allow us to actually fast track the pathway, and vice versa for Indian firms as well. So anyone who has already gone through the pain of months and years of auditing and compliance assurance programs here should be able to work for European primes, even in the defense sector, without facing too much friction. And you remove duplication in this thing, you save time, you save money. So, yeah.
Okay. So what we're hearing is that the need for frameworks, agreement, something more solidified, so that companies know how to operate or what are the regulations that they are dealing with whilst they are collaborating with each other or trying to expand in the other region. Now, Pacome, coming to you to build on this, I have two quick questions for you. One is that do you think the EU Space Act can sort of do this with standard setting, with sort of trying to build regulations for space sustainability? Would that be the way ahead for other countries to sort of merge with this European regulation, especially India? And second question, which you could sort of answer post this, what are some of the areas where you see in your experience that this collaboration between EU and India could first start to happen?
Sure. Sorry. So about the Space Act itself, not to say there are no discussions around it still in Europe about what it is and how it can maintain both objective of delivering capacity in space, be future-proof, and as well remaining competitive. So there are all those discussions that is applicable to any regulation almost and framework. But yes, wherever possible, I think having it as a source of inspiration or at least alignment in some places, which can also come to form of certification, if we call it that way, to have a reciprocally approved solution is certainly a possible path. So whether it's all of it or part of it, but having alignment. And I think there, the notion of standards, it can't necessarily apply to all the type of space activities, but where possible to have convergence. I mean, inter-satellite links with more work done by SDA almost in the US to try to develop some standards. But we could think, for example, of SSA, where even the format of data, how you have formats of data that are compatible between several nations so that we don't have each nation developing a complete different system that make it extremely difficult then to leverage those capabilities in their respective countries. So obviously there are some technical dimensions where it's much more difficult than others, but looking at some capabilities from industry, more flight-proof or regulation-proof, to more kind of data and where possible standards. It's happening in telecom, more driven by 3GPP and so forth, rather than national dialogues, but for more sovereign capabilities, there is not such equivalent framework really. So it's to the nation to embrace that for some very specific subdomains of the space activities.
Okay, thanks. Abhimanyu, another quick question for you, because we've heard today and we keep hearing that space and defense are no longer to be seen in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
You have AI, cybersecurity, all different machine learning, all of these advanced technologies are sort of deeply embedded in space. What do you think about that? Like, because you're working on the intersection of cybersecurity and defense, do you?
Well, we are essentially a wargaming, AI-driven wargaming platform. What we give is a simulation of what is possible. Things can go down, your satellite can be compromised. Do you have the resilience to go through that experience and come out? Is something that any defense force would need to have, and that is the technology we're building. So it brings all of these pieces together, yes, but right now it's purely software, because I believe as a startup, we're constrained by, sort of not taking a bite too much that we can't chew. So I'm sorry, going back to the question of...
Do you see that this aspect of space no longer being seen in isolation is or has also been understood by policymakers, is also been translated?
Yeah, I'm not sure that is entirely true, because just the earlier panel, one of the colonels, he mentioned there is a dire need for change of culture. Nobody talks about space in school. If you don't talk about space in school, that will not get translated into studies in colleges, and we will not have a skilled workforce, which is the basic necessity to get anything done in the next 10 years. So I think having a mass, well-skilled workforce that understands all these different pieces, nuts and bolts together, is very essential. And I think, I don't think so HRD is probably checking all the boxes.
Okay. And in the interest of time now, I want all the speakers to come up with like one thought that they feel is going to define this relationship in the future, or something that we have to take care of, something that defines this relationship between India and EU today. It could be 2 words, it could be one thought. We can start with you, Chiranjeevi.
I'll go with 2 words. Mutual trust is what I feel.
Abhishek?
2 different words. So, more predictability, more execution.
Come.
Well, from a different perspective, space will be software-driven, if not AI. So we talked about certification working together, how to make that happen in the context of electronics and smart, let's say, space in architectures. And that's something to develop as a framework, certainly.
Keyur?
Move fast and together.
You're coming after this, after Abhimanyu. You get some more time.
I would say trust and interoperability.
Okay. Okay. You get more time now to speak. You get.
See, exactly. I think Abhimanyu brought out a very important aspect of it, the skill. Today, if you see the space, is nothing like chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, electronics, electric communication, instrumentation, whatnot, mechanical, aerospace. If you bundle all together, make it as a capsule, that is space. Nothing more than, except remote sensing. But the question here is the rating. Let us say when you do commercial things, you may have to follow some kind of industry standards. If you want to build a rocket or a satellite, it's a space standards. Procurement, radiation hardening, then derating. So many things comes into picture. This is exactly the awareness and outreach. That second thing is skill when you say, so it will not be built overnight. You have to cultivate this culture right from the 8th class. This is what the ISRO and InSpace does. In fact, Dr. Vinod is there, who is talking to several IITs and universities to build the space, let us say, technology as a curriculum. In fact, today IIT Indore, IIT Roorkee, several, let us say more than 12 NITs, 8 IITs, they are introducing the space technology as a part of research or something like that. That is a slow pace. But second thing is skill development. The skill development is when you pack something like that mission analysis you are doing. What is the mission analysis? What is the STK? What is the, let us say, some kind of ANSYS, some kind of thermal imaging, thermal processing? These skills have to be in a niche area where we have to identify these areas and develop the people for the industry. Today I am telling you the skill, the resources, manpower resources, acute shortage. Every one of these startups can agree with me. If you wanted to recruit somebody, there is no skill at all. Modeling, packaging, let's say ANSYS, let's say what are the kinds of vibration checks that you have to do, how to qualify a system, right from a battery pack to avionics to the launch vehicle systems to pyros to composites to nozzles development to the actuators to inertial systems, what not. So the skill development is one very, very, very important subject which has to go in a long way. I think Europe and India collaboration, the skill development, outreach, awareness, industry, academia collaboration should be the focus. In fact, that's what the part of the discussion also. This way the universities can join together in skill development and first workforce development. That will go in a long way to help the both industry and ecosystem.
Thank you, sir. I think that was a perfect summary for whatever we've discussed, because you've gone beyond industrial cooperation to also talk about skill development and how there can be collaborations even at a university level. So you can build collaboration between both the regions from ground up. It doesn't always have to be from the primes, but it can also be also at a university level, also at a skill development level, and that's fantastic. We have 1 minute for like one question from the crowd. Does anyone have any question for anyone?
Yes.
Oh, please.
I just had a comment to what Abhimanyu said, and that's a recommendation to the side. He talked about milestone-based payment. As a handling just this issue. So you already have index time analysis. So I don't know, so maybe there's a case in point that as a startup somebody keeps adding year after year, you need to have, on a quarterly based, I had organized this session, I know which is only day startup. So that is already there, and all of you must need to go through the app 25 now, which is already hosted on the MOD website. So my recommendation would be that the milestone payment already exists as far as the MOD is concerned.
Explaining that, but I think maybe it's not as clear as it should be. I need to go and relook at it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We've ended the session exactly on time. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you very much indeed. I would request our distinguished chair, Dr. N. Sudheer Kumar, former director, CBPO, ISRO headquarters, to kindly do the honor, sir, of presenting mementos to all our eminent panelists on behalf of the organizers. We begin with presenting to our moderator, Mr. Divyanshu Ganatra, partner Grace Space Consulting. Also, our partners in jointly organizing this session. Once again, we thank Grace Space Consulting for jointly organizing this session. Thank you. We present to Mr. Abhishek Agrawal, Director of Business Development, ICEYE. ICEYE is our platinum partner of DevSat. We present to Mr. Revillon, CEO, Novaspace. We present to Dr. Chiranjeevi Phanindra, founder and CEO, Cosmoserve. To Mr. Keyur Gandhi, regulatory head, Dhruva Space. And to Mr. Abhimanyu Singh, co-founder and CMO, NashShield. And I would like to invite on stage Mr. Govind Rajan, board member, SIA-INDIA, To kindly do the honors of felicitating our distinguished chair for this session, Dr. N. Sudheer Kumar. Thank you, sir, for doing the honors. May I request all our eminent dignitaries to come together for a group photograph, please. And ladies and gentlemen, kindly remain seated. We are straight away moving into the next session. And once again, would like to inform all our delegates, especially those who have joined us later, that SIA-INDIA has also organized B2B meetings, which are organized as you move out on the right-hand side. You may kindly book your slot, which are being booked on first-come, first-served basis. Each slot is for 30 minutes only.